We all have pieces of media that shaped us during our childhood. There are some that we instantly point to if someone asks, but sometimes we can't forget just how influential a piece of media was until it randomly all comes back. In my case, the media in question led to the creation of one of my longest lasting OCs, one that went through countless iterations and for years held the rank of being my most fleshed out character. And it all began with a little known movie called Alien vs Predator. So here's the story. My brother randomly saw the first Alien vs Predator movie on TV, which then led to our parents buying the entire Alien and Predator box set and us watching all of them. Keep in mind that I was like 10 years old at this point. Potential childhood trauma aside, me and my brother became obsessed. And so when we played with our toys, we began to include both Xenomorphs and Yoshi, though it was mostly the Xenomorphs. Nothing quite like the male fantasy of a lost battalion of Lego clone troopers gunning down an endless horde of Playmobil dinosaurs. But a problem arose. Where the hell did all these Xenomorphs come from? This is where our tale begins. A mad scientist. That's it. That's the grand mastermind behind it all. Some doofus without ethics is breeding Xenomorphs under a spooky castle. At first he did it because he got contracted by the Yautja, but eventually he just did it for the lols. Using some random Lego pieces, I assembled this fella. He's wearing a hazard suit, his face is cloaked, and he has an amber walking stick like John Hammond. I named him Xeno, as in Xenomorph, because names are hard. The Lego vs Playmobil shenanigans went on for a while, but eventually Xeno was ready to evolve. He wasn't directly linked to Star Wars, which made him more flexible and allowed him to cross over into other stories as time went on. He would remain a mad scientist who breeds alien monsters, of course, but a backstory began to emerge. It all comes back to his name. Xeno, or Xénos as I eventually called him to be more grammatically accurate. It's Greek for strange, alien or foreign, so of course this could only mean one thing. Xénos is an immortal warrior from ancient Greece who after obtaining alien technology traveled to space and became a mad scientist. This may sound like a ludicrous leap in logic, and truth be told, I do not remember my thought process behind it. I think the whole immortality thing was inspired by Wolverine. So why was he immortal? The original reason was that he somehow saved the life of a cosmic entity which then rewarded him with eternal life. Later on I would change it, so instead the Grim Reaper was in love with Xénos and therefore refused to let him die. The Grim Reaper of my canon being a hot redhead. I of course immediately fell into the trap of tying my immortal OC to a bunch of historical events. So he fought in the Trojan War, saw Jesus die, worked as an assistant to both Archimedes and Da Vinci, was a samurai during the Sengoku period, went to America aboard the Mayflower, had a fight with Blackbeard, and just happened to be in Siberia during the Tunguska explosion. That last one is important because you see, the Tunguska explosion was actually caused by a race of alien cephalopods trying to conquer Earth. And yes, I did just steal that from Crisis. Luckily, Xénos and the time-traveling cyborg Dimetrodon, don't worry about it, were able to stop them by blowing up the mothership, hence the explosion. Xénos then salvaged the spaceship to fuck off into space and breed legally distinct Xenomorphs, but he eventually came back to Earth to be involved in my superhero setting. Oh yeah, also, the reason his parents named him Strange was that he's left-handed. Very normal thing to do. As time went on, I eventually abandoned most of my old OCs and the lore surrounding them. It just got too complicated and also my interests had changed. But I kept Xénos around. Something about the concept of an immortal just really stuck with me. That said, I would take him into a radically different direction. Instead of making him a veteran of the Trojan War, why not go back even further? Why not make him an immortal caveman? I'm not exactly sure where that idea came from, but Vandal Savage may have been involved. So now Xénos was a caveman. Specifically, he was the last Neanderthal, cursed to outlive his kind and watch modern man take over. But the joke's on us, because instead of a superhero setting, the world is now a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Xénos is no longer a scientist who went to space. He's now a depressed and broken man that aimlessly wanders the land, armed with a magic sword based on the Kusanagi no Tsurugi. The The various historical events were scrubbed from his backstory, but he still went to Japan to become a samurai and fight yokai. Note that this was long before I started watching anime. I just really like Japanese folklore. I also at some point gave him the nickname Ivan, which he got during the time in a gulag, so now his full name was Ivan Xénos. Of course, I did need something for him to do during the post-apocalypse, and so I landed on him having to escort a young girl to a safe haven. A grizzled warrior and his surrogate child, tale as old as time. Now the exact details of the story went through numerous iterations and changed wildly. At one point I added the idea that Xénos had a previous surrogate daughter before the apocalypse. She was... oh god, how do I explain this? So back in his samurai days, Xénos managed to defeat an Onryo by letting her possess him, causing the spirit to see all his memories. Suddenly remembering 40,000 years of pain and misery made her snap out of her vengeful rage. She thanked him for purifying her soul, but decided to stay in the mortal realm as a peaceful ghost. A couple centuries later, a random girl wanders into the forest to take her own life. The ghost girl stops her and offers a deal. Instead of killing herself, the living girl could just relinquish her body to the ghost so that her soul goes to heaven, where the ghost girl gets a second chance at life. The ghost girl then seeks out Xénos and the two travel together as father and daughter. They eventually end up in the Middle East, where they witness some US soldiers committing war crimes. Ghost girl tries to stop them but gets shot, dying again, and this time for good. This results in Xénos going apeshit, killing the soldiers and going to war against the US, which somehow causes World War III and the apocalypse. This is what I consider to be my edgy era, and in time I would abandon this whole backstory. As for the present plotline, the girl Xénos had to escort was Aliki Lutz, another recycled OC from my superhero setting. Her whole deal is that she's secretly part demon, though the exact details of what that means changed from iteration to iteration. What also changed was the setting, going from post-apocalyptic Earth to a post-apocalyptic fantasy world, and then back to post-apocalyptic Earth, and then back to a fantasy world, because I just couldn't make up my mind. During all this back and forth, I began to rethink Xénos' characterization. Sure, we all love the grizzled old man with a heart of gold, but what would living for 40,000 years do to a person? This is where we enter the Murder Hobo Era. First off, he was no longer called Xénos. His name was now just Ivan the Wanderer. Secondly, the reason for his immortality is that after he got banished from his tribe, a trickster god granted him immortality and gave him the magic sword Azov, also called the blade to slay those not meant to be slain. He then proceeded to pull a Kratos, earning him the title of God Slayer. Among other things, he developed a rivalry with another OC of mine, Gajor, the god of thunder, who honestly deserves his own separate video. I also threw in some inspiration from both Cain and the legend of the Wandering Jew, hence the title of the Wanderer. This was after I had just finished watching the ancient Magus' Bride. Ivan was now an immortal madman, completely devoid of empathy. A big question was whether he went mad from being immortal or if he was just always like that. Remember how I said he got banished? The exact details would be a mystery, as even Ivan himself is unable to remember, but he'd occasionally have flashbacks of a crying woman and his own hands being covered in blood. I let you decide what that means. Another core aspect of Murder Hobo Ivan was that he wanted to genocide all demons, which is a problem if you remember that Aliki, the girl he's escorting, is half demon. So the news story was as follows. Aliki Lutz is a half demon girl who grew up in a bunker. After her family dies and supplies run out, she journeys forth into the post-apocalypse, which was caused by a terrible pandemic. She then runs into Ivan the Wanderer, who agrees to escort her to the last remnant of civilization, not realizing Aliki's true nature. It would have been sort of a subversion of the old man and surrogate daughter trope, making you think that Ivan starts caring for Aliki, only for him to eventually find out the truth and then try to kill her anyway. At some point I added a third character called Azlok the Armless. She is a witch, she works for the Mothman, and she lost her arms during 9/11. Don't worry about it. For a very long time, this was my main story, the one that I would turn into a best-selling novel and make me rich and famous. There's only one problem. I never actually wrote that story. Now this would be the end of it, but back in 2023 I decided to dig out some of my old OCs and give them a much needed redesign. This included the original version of Xénos, the ancient Greek scientist who went to space. The result was this. Not bad, definitely an upgrade from the last time I drew him. So what was the point of all this? Well, for one, I just wanted an excuse to ramble about one of my most important OCs and his insane lore. But I also think it's fun and interesting to highlight the evolution he's gone through. Remember, this whole thing started with a custom Lego figure I built as a child to justify why Star Wars characters are fighting xenomorphs. Ideas can come in the strangest of ways, and time can take them to even stranger places. Lastly, I want to finally give him the proper redesign he deserves. Or rather they, because at this point Xénos and Ivan are entirely different characters, so I redesigned them both. Starting with Ivan the Wanderer. He's still basically the same, immortal murder hobo caveman with a magic sword. I really wanted to emphasize his disheveled look. His hair is unkempt and formed into dreadlocks, his skin is covered in dirt, and his clothes are a patchwork of fur soaked in mud and blood. Also his eyes are cold and soulless because he is in fact dead inside. For some reason I really struggled with the beads in his hair and beard, to the point that I thought about removing them entirely, but in the end I kept them because they do add some much needed contrast to his color scheme. His sword is still based on the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, and I just traced it to get the shape right. To properly show off the sword and its magical nature, I made two versions, one with the sword on Ivan's back and one with the sword in his hands. I didn't really elaborate on the sword's actual powers, but to put it simply, it is charged with lightning and can cut through anything. It can also be thrown and controlled by Ivan like how MCU Thor controls Mjolnir. As a side note, even though Ivan has been using a sword since before written history, he is absolutely terrible at sword fighting. You kinda don't need to learn any form or technique when your sword just cuts through anything. Now for Xénos, man, I was struggling to get his face right. This is what happens when you spend years drawing cute anime girls and suddenly need to draw a man. I referenced some drawings of Odysseus, cause that just makes sense. But a major inspiration was Heisenberg from Resident Evil Village, which is why he wears sunglasses. He's just got the right vibe, you know. As for his armor, I tried to base it on actual Bronze Age armor, but upgraded and adapted using the advanced technology Xénos would have access to. He also got a second version to show him with the helmet and hood. I run into this issue every time, but hoods are just deceptively hard to draw, man. It's always so frustrating to get them right. Also, he still has his amber walking cane. Not that he actually needs it, he just wants it to look fancy. That's it for his design, but his story also got changes. He's still a veteran of the Trojan War who became immortal. However, the reason for his immortality is now a mystery. He also still went to space after the Tunguska event, only to eventually return claiming he has come to help out humanity. He also claims to have witnessed and been involved in numerous historical events, but it's hard to tell if he's telling the truth or just making stuff up. Xénos is what you'd call a magnificent bastard. Charismatic, morally dubious, always 3 steps ahead, and unbearably smug, acting like he's the smartest man in the room, because unfortunately he usually is. So there you have it, Ivan and Xénos, the caveman and the scientist. What do you think? Which incarnation of the character do you prefer? Do you have any OCs with crazy lore that went through similarly drastic changes? I'd love to make more videos about me redesigning my old OCs. I don't have nearly as much to say about most of them as I did for Xénos, so those videos would probably be more akin to my Holo Hammer or Pokemon Gijinka series. I hope to see you there. Bye!